Welcome to the Nebraska Shootaround podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Padilla, and joining me for part one of a special two-part episode is Hail Varsity's women's basketball beat writer, Drake Keeler, who is here to talk about the women's team. The last time we had you on was back in December after the win against Kansas, and the reason for the big gap there is probably because of the team's performance since then. I believe they went 6-11 after that game, and ended up in the WNIT as opposed to the NCAA tournament, which I believe was the goal heading into the season. Obviously, Allison Widener's injury was a huge part of that, and we'll touch on that more specifically in a minute here. But overall, what did you kind of see over the second half of the season that led us to this point?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of inconsistency. They lost games, even without Allison Weiner that, they should have won. You look at that loss against Rutgers that they missed their first 21 threes or something. Still a crazy performance to look back on 2 months past it. The loss to Minnesota, game winner, was 95 points by Minnesota. And even, against some good teams, they had some opportunities. Like at home against Illinois, you lead by 10, give up a 20-0 run. That's a game looking at where they are now that, would have really helped to close that out. And then, of course, we got to, and it was just like a lot of inconsistency because they showed that they could play well. I mean, even 2 games after Allison Weiner went out, they took Indiana to overtime. But we just never got that kind of consistency from them.
Yeah, and was it more the offensive issues? Was it defensive? Was it combination of both? They just didn't do anything particularly consistently well, or where'd you see the issues?
Yeah, I think it was mostly the offense. I think down the stretch, the defense kind of became part of that too. I mean, like I mentioned, giving up 95 points to Minnesota, but I think more often than not, it was the offense. The defense was, usually pretty good, and a lot of the games where some of the games where they struggled, it was because the offense was turning it over a bunch, So I think it was like Jazz Shelley. I think she's had kind of an up and down season scoring the ball. She was really good last time we talked in December. She was on a great run of games. January was a lot rougher, and I think the offense has never been like consistently there. They had a few 5-point quarters, and that's just not gonna win games usually.
Yeah, Jazz's splits are pretty wild. Shot just under 40% in November, almost 50% from the field in December. Shot 23% in January, shot 40% in March, or in February and March there. And the three ball has kind of been all over the place too. 33, 50, 19, 37, 50. And that's kind of, I mean, she's your best player at this point. And as she goes, kind of so goes the team, except for that Minnesota game where she had like 37 or something like that. And they still found a way to lose. That's still, like, I didn't watch that game start to finish, but I was kind of following along with it, and I turned it on for like the last couple of minutes there, and was watching on my phone. Just unbelievable the way that game ended there, and to give up that wide open corner 3 on the last play. Just you can't help off strong side corner. It's just the mental mistakes. That had to have been driving Coach Williams crazy. But let's talk about kind of the Widener injury and the kind of fallout from that, because Allison had made a huge jump at that point. 10 points a game, 6 boards, 2.5 assists, shooting 54% from the field, 36% from 3, and 74% from the line. So obviously we knew she was a great athlete, getting downhill, playing in transition, but the shooting was starting to come around a little bit too. And so where did you see kind of her loss impact the team the most?
Yeah, I mean, it was in a lot of ways. I think early in the season when the team would get into kind of an offensive cold streak, she could just go to the hoop and finish and just force a layup in. And she was shooting over 50%. So that was a big part of the offense. And just like you see that the team's depth was, kind of struggling down the stretch. And if she was still in the starting lineup, then, I mean, they probably would have eventually still worked Sam Hybie back in the starters and had Maddie Kroll off the bench. So, it was just having another, good starter out there. And I think she was a big part of the offense. She was playing really well. And even on the defensive side, she made, a lot of great plays. The play she got hurt on was a chase down block late in the fourth quarter. That was a huge play in that game.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that probably, like, losing her impacted Jazz as well, having someone else that can run the offense. Jazz, she's a really interesting player where brilliant court vision, really good playmaker, but also a good spot up shooter. I think she's one that probably thrives more as like a co-point guard versus someone having to run the offense by herself. And I think that's probably where Jazz or where Allison fit in really well, and that dynamic worked. And I think part of the problem when she went down, I'm guessing the hope was that Sam could get back to kind of where she was pre-injury, and that never really happened, unfortunately. Shot 36% from the field, 39 on twos, 24 on threes. Still averaged 10, 5 boards, 3 assists, 1.5 steals. So still did a lot of the Sam Hybe stuff, but almost 3 turnovers a game, and just the efficiency wasn't really there, right?
Yeah, I mean, you'd like see it in flashes. She had some really good games where she'd like take over for a stretch and play at the level, but at that level, But then there would also be some really poor stretches with turnovers and kind of she can always like force her way to the rim, and sometimes that ends up looking ugly. It was more inconsistency there too, and like you said, she never got up to that level that she had played at kind of in previous years.
Yeah, and that's the other story. I think Lucen Widener-Hurst is. I mean, you weren't really expecting to have Hybe available at all this season when the news first came down, and it's hard missing time trying to work your way back in mid-season, and suddenly like they planning to ease her in, like her minutes the first couple of games back, minus the one where she came in, got hurt immediately, and then missed a couple, came back. The minutes leading up to the Widener injury, and then suddenly it's like, no, we can't ease her in anymore. She's just got to play because we don't have anybody else. Had to be thrust into basically her old role, and just doesn't seem like she was ready for that, which is understandable, again, coming off a serious injury that sidelined her for so long. But you had Hybe, Bourne, Markowski, Shelley, all double figures. And then I think that's probably where Widener's injury hurt too. And obviously Trinity Brady missed most of the season. It just seemed like kind of that bench never really came along. I think Maddie Kroll gave them about what Amy Williams expected from her. She was always going to be more of a glue player, just doing the little things, hustling out there, scrapping on defense, versus a big time stat sheet stuffer. And that's kind of what you got, but just doesn't really seem like. I mean, Colin Hake showed some signs, but it doesn't really seem like Annika Stewart or Kendall Moriarty or Kendall Coley made a big leap this season.
Yeah, no, not really. And as the season went on, it felt like late in the season, like they really leaned on the starters, and were playing them big minutes. And like you said, Colin Hake, I think she showed some really good flash, especially for true freshman, but then just wasn't really consistent in that. Maggie Mendelson had those 2 great games, like her first 2. And then, that wasn't always there either. I think it was against Northwestern maybe, where she had to kind of pick that back up, or one of the last regular season games. So that was good to see, but it was kind of like you said, no one really stepped up off the bench for an extended period of time.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see kind of how that plays out for Maggie, and how long she tries to do both, and how that impacts her development in one or the other or both. I mean, I don't think you can expect a true freshman who enrolled early, coming off of straight from volleyball, to come in and be a major impact player. But I think you saw some of the signs of the rim protection, the rebounding, that she can help this team off the bench a little bit, and give a little different look than, because right now Annika Stewart is your only reserve front court player, really, right? So but that'll be one to continue to monitor. So yeah, they finished 16-14 overall this season. Went 8-10, finished 8th in the Big Ten, and drew Michigan State in the conference right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
So what would you see? What kind of happened there? Obviously, they went one and done.
Yeah, the first 4 possessions, I think it was the first 4 possessions they turned it over, and that was really bad to see. They, only started down 7-0 at that point, but still just came out unprepared and were struggling with the press, which is how Michigan State nearly came back from the 20-point deficit last time.
Well, that and some bizarre officiating, but go on.
yeah, you're right, but still, and then they had a few just plays you can't have. I think it was before halftime that Kendall Coley ran into someone shooting a 3. They missed the shot, but then had the 3 free throws to make it I don't remember what the score was, but it changed things, right? And then they had, a really bad start to the fourth quarter as well, where Michigan State got up a lot. Then they came back and had the chance. They had 2 pretty good chances, too tight at the end. Ashley kind of forced one up, but then she got the offensive rebound, had Maddie Crow wide open, and she couldn't hit it. So, they were there, but they just made too many mistakes, from the turnovers to, the foul I mentioned and things like that.
Yeah, and the worst they could have done going 1-1 at that point, because of some of the bad losses down the stretch and the missed opportunities with a few of their big wins to kind of put a headliner on their resume. So with that, they kind of fall into the WNIT range over the NCAA tournament. But postseason there for the Big Ten, I believe Jazz got first, Alexis Markowski second team, and Izzy Bourne, honorable mention. What do you kind of think of the way the postseason honors turned out for both Nebraska and then just conference-wide as a whole?
Yeah, I felt like I didn't strongly disagree with any selections. I maybe not expected Jazz to get first team because of the kind of the shooting numbers, but I obviously the coaches know she's a very good player, and I think it was well deserved. But that was good to see Alexis Markowski's second team again. That was kind of expected with the season she had, averaging a double-double. Yeah. That was good to see from her. And yeah, Sam Hybe was also an honorable mention, I think, by media, not coaches. But her and Bourne have made big plays. Izzy Bourne especially, really consistently, obviously a double-figure scorer.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that the coaches preseason voted Alexis first team, right, over Jazz.
Yeah, well, I'm just realizing that you mentioned it.
Yeah, I thought I understand that Alexis really had a strong second half of the vision to the season, I guess, earned the coaches' respect. But this always felt as impactful as Alexis is and was. This felt like Jazz was kind of the key to this team. She's the highest upside player. And so I'm not surprised at all to see her kind of emerge, averaged 14 and change. 14 and a half, six assists, 5 rebounds, 1.5 steals. Shot 37% from 3, but like you said, it was kind of all over the place. For stretches, she was lights out. He had some ridiculous games this season, but then others just couldn't throw it in the ocean. And at her size, it's just tough to consistently be an impactful interior scorer, I think. But yeah, great season for Jazz. Now, obviously, honored on senior night with her fellow seniors. We know Sam Hybe is done. Both Izzy and Jazz have a COVID year if they want it, and I know Jazz said at the beginning, back at media days, I asked her about it. Said she didn't want to necessarily drag it out. Wasn't going to take it forever because she wanted to give Amy a chance to know what she needed to do from a roster construction standpoint and for future planning. But it seems like we're still kind of in the wait and see mode on that for both of them, right? Do you have a feel one way or the other?
Yeah, I don't have a feeling one way or the other. I think Jazz said she wanted to do it before the season ended.
Exactly. Yeah.
That didn't happen, which is, it is what it is. Obviously a tough decision for both of them. It seems like it could go either way. Obviously it would be massive to have, either of them back. But I don't know. We'll have to see. Obviously the NIL is a big part of it, and just, being from Australia.
Yeah. And you think that's kind of like a joint decision? Do you think, would you see one staying and one not, or do you think that it's like, yeah, if we're coming back, we're doing it together?
Yeah, I mean, it would, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it could go anyway. I don't think it's necessarily like two or none, but it wouldn't be too surprising if one left, one stayed. Not thinking anyone is more likely than the other, but yeah.
That is kind of the biggest question, I think, heading into the offseason. Obviously, Markowski, you're excited about, developed the three ball. It's still kind of coming along there. Shot 37%. She's made it a little over 2 attempts a game, but it's made it a consistent part of her game. Obviously, 10.2 boards a game. I think the consistency of the interior scoring is probably where the next step is for her. Would you think the ability to finish a little bit better rate? But so you've got, whether Jess comes back or not, you've got Alexis as kind of your centerpiece, and then got to hope for some development around her. But season's not over yet. We still got some games, at least one game left to play. They were selected for the WNIT, and they are taking on Missouri State in the first round. We're recording this on Tuesday. The first round game is on Wednesday at 6:00 Central Time. What did you think, or what have you seen from Missouri, and what do you think of their draw? It looks like Northern Iowa and Colorado State is on the other half of their bracket there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously WNIT full of, good enough teams to, I think, challenge Nebraska. I don't think it'll be just a pushover matchup. But they had a good year. They had some wins over some tournament teams like St. Louis. I think they went 1-2 against Drake, another, a team that beat Nebraska early in the season. So, I think I was looking at their kind of just numbers. I think they're a pretty good rebounding team, especially on the offensive boards. And that, I feel like, is something Nebraska kind of struggle with against those type of teams at points this year. But, otherwise, like, they won't like jump out at you offensively or defensively just from like their points per game and stuff like that. But it's a solid team, and it seems well-rounded, so I think it'll be an interesting matchup to watch. And on the draw, of course you got those teams. And then on the kind of other side of group 3, there's some, Kansas is there.
Yep.
You kind of, obviously they have to win 2 games or so first. But that's, a possible rematch. Arkansas is over there. I think they had some really good wins this year. So it's going to be it'll be challenging to, go far. But obviously they have the talent to do so.
Yeah. And they committee respect them enough to give them a home game in this first round. So Missouri State is coming to PBA. So fans, make sure to show up and support the team. Have a chance to see them in person again this season. If they were to win, do you know where the next round would be? Like, what's the seeding looking like on the other side?
They don't have seeds on the bracket. They just tell you who's hosting the first round matchup. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Nebraska hosted. It's weird. They're like at the top of their region, like the top, but like I don't think that's necessarily a signifier.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how that's worked out. I think there's a decent chance, just because Nebraska was fairly close to the tournament, probably in the first like 10 teams out. So there's a good chance they host another game, I'd say.
So what are you looking like? What's going to be important for this team heading into the NIT? Is it do you think that Amy plays it, hey, we're just playing to win, we're playing the same rotations? Do you try to mix in some of the younger players, try to get them going, try to build their confidence a little bit? Like, how what do you think would be the best path for Amy in terms of approaching this postseason run?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I wouldn't change things too much.
Yeah.
I think you just want to go through it and, try to win. Maybe get some of the bench players a little more minutes. I don't think I'm going off the top of my head kind of, but like the first round of Big Ten tournament, I don't think any of those bench players played more than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think, you might want to get a player like Callan Hake in there, see if she can, because like she showed flashes when she had extended time on the court. Like that game against Indiana comes to mind. So, I mean, maybe you kind of put them in that postseason environment, try to get them some extended minutes on the court, but I wouldn't change things too much. I think it's something you got to try to have success in the tournament and just go as far as you can.
All right. Get any other thoughts as we kind of wrap up? We can, depending on how the runs goes, we can kind of look back on it if they're able to make a deep run and kind of touch base again. But anything else you want to touch on here before we wrap up?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, I think it'll be fun to watch. Obviously, this team has been enjoyable to watch at a lot of times this year. Obviously, some games not so much, but it'll be interesting to see how they do.
Well, yeah, hopefully you'll have a long run here to cover. Not necessarily the season they wanted, but hey, they're still playing in the postseason, which a lot of teams are sitting at home right now, including the one that I cover that we'll discuss here in part 2 once I bring on my regular co-host Jacob Bigelow. But in the meantime, hopefully you have a few more games here to cover. And for everybody listening, Drake's also in the middle of baseball season. So follow along his coverage here as we head into the spring. And again, you can reach out to him. You have any questions about the women's team, any thoughts, anything, you can find him at Drake Keeler on Twitter, I believe. Correct?
Yep.
It's Keeler. And thanks a lot, Drake, for coming on. And again, hopefully we'll have some good things to talk about later. But yeah, good luck.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Back for part 2 of this special 2-part podcast, and joining me now is my regular co-host Jacob Bigelow. Biggs, how you doing? We've got some NCAA tournament basketball on the TV right now.
We do. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I haven't even looked at and or touched a bracket yet, but that's just because life happens, and I've been busy taking care of some stuff. But no, it's a wonderful time for us hoops heads, as Damon Benning would call us hoops heads. But yeah, now we get to recap a deflating few days in the world of Nebraska basketball.
Yeah, the team I talked about in the first half of this pod still playing. The one we're going to discuss now, unfortunately, is not, and biggest reason is a first round flameout in the Big Ten tournament. And it's just such a disappointing way for the season to end. It was a, let's get the score here, 78-75 loss to Minnesota. And Nebraska all season long had managed to avoid bad losses right up until the very last game of the season. Just could not. Like it was, so I was watching this down, trying to split my attention between the boys state tournament down at PBA and this game, watching on an iPad, and somehow managed to watch the whole thing really without the Wi-Fi giving out on me. So that was great. But yeah, looking ahead, just kind of scanning back here, Nebraska before this, Nebraska's worst loss of the season in terms of KenPom rating was St. John's at 85. Third game of the year, and that was without Derek Walker. So that was what made this season so different than the previous few, is the ability to avoid bad losses, to take care of business against teams that you should have beat. And here we are coming into the postseason, the Big Ten tournament, with a lot to play for, against a team that they had already beaten twice. And you go out and lose to Minnesota, who is ranked 217th in the country in KenPom. And so just Like everything that this season had been just leaves such a bad taste in your mouth. And because of the loss, obviously knocked out of the NIT. They looked like they were one of the first few teams out, most likely, just as based on kind of the prognostication of the one NIT bracketologist out there. Thought they would barely sneak in.
Shout out, John. Shout out.
Yeah, I'd give the Twitter handle right now if I remembered it off the top of my head. But
I think it's at NY I think it's at NY Buckets. I think it's at I think it's at NY Buckets. That's John Templon, I think, who was giving Nebraska fans some fodder there for about a week with NIT talk. By the way, he looked at it. There's a good chance that maybe two of the first couple teams outside of the NIT were Nebraska and the team coached by Nebraska's former coach, because that's the way it looked coming down the stretch. There was, at one point a projection where Nebraska and San Jose were in the same region, and Craig Smith was in there too, and everyone's like, "Oh my goodness, storylines!" Like just thinking the most of NIT projections. But yeah, I mean, I think deflating is the perfect way to put it. It kind of had the feeling of a win and you're in, to the NIT against Minnesota. Like you said, a team that had already beaten twice, once on their home floor. Second game that kind of just kept them at arm's length the entire time. Never really had any trouble with them. And obviously, basketball, as former guest Mark Titus would say, is a make shots game, and you got to make shots to win at this level. And Minnesota was making all kinds of them, especially early on in the first half.
But it's kind of a weird game in that at the start, Nebraska got off to an 8-0 start. First 4.5 minutes, they were playing well on both ends. They missed some good looks. They were getting good possessions most times down the floor. They got off to a terrible start for Minnesota. They 0 for 4 from the field with 4 turnovers during that start. Then defensive mistakes started piling up, and Nebraska never really could kind of get themselves back on track to where they were making positive plays on both ends, stringing together good plays on offense and defense. And from that 8-0 start, Minnesota went on the rest of the half. They shot 15 of 22 from the field, including 5 of 10 from 3, and only had 4 turnovers. Scored 37 points in 15 and a half minutes, assisted on 14 of their 15 buckets to take a 37-33 lead at halftime. And kind of that assist number tells the story. Like Minnesota just was picking apart Nebraska's defense and moving the ball, getting it to where it needed to go, and getting really good looks every time. And at that point, they got into a rhythm. They got hot. They got confident, and then they were starting to knock down everything. And just kind of think throughout, there was so much ball watching, getting caught on weak side and screens on the backside. 2 guys not on the same page. One guy slow to switch, or one guy rotating to the wrong spot. Like there were just so many defensive mistakes throughout this game that allowed Minnesota to take control and to get into a rhythm to the point where now in the second half, they got to another start. They built the lead up to 10, and now you're down 10 in the second half. Takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of execution to get back in and win that game. And it's so hard to get up over the hump. And that's what we saw in this, where just the margin for error is so slim when you dig yourself a hole early. And they managed to get that thing down back. They got it down to a 1-point game. Well, so they got it down to 1-point game, and Sam had 2 looks from 3 over their next couple of possessions to take the lead. They missed. Minnesota goes down, hits a 3. Casey answered with a 3, but again, just kind of you're talking about the make or miss. Nebraska had 2 really good looks and couldn't get it to go, and then Minnesota takes advantage of theirs immediately afterward. So that's kind of how this game played out. Like they got so close, but and then the mental mistakes pop up, because after that, Casey hit a 3 to make it a 3-point game, have a great defensive possession, knock the ball back, Jay Henley goes over and gets it. Shot clock winding down, kind of throws up a desperation, like leaning three. And CJ Wilcher flies out there and tries to, I don't know, like block the shot or whatever, and fouls the guy with literally 0 on the shot clock. Ball's in the air as the clock goes off, and gets 3 free throws there. Like that's the stop. You guys, one of your best defensive possessions of the game, and just goes brain dead at the end and commits a really bad foul. And he goes 3 for 3. So now you're down 6 with 3 minutes to go. So you had 3-4 different chances there to really to tie this, to take the lead, and couldn't execute on any one of them.
Don't forget,
didn't quit.
Let's also not forget the fact Jamison Battle fouled out with 9 minutes to go, and Ben Johnson got a technical, and there was a little like that was where it felt like, all right, this is it. This is the this is the moment they're gonna wake up, like put it all together, like here we go, momentum has shifted, and even that still wasn't enough.
Yeah, and that was kind of the sequence that right before where I started that I wrote down and forgot to touch on. But yeah, at 9:31, Sam drew Jamison Battle's 4th foul, and Ben Johnson decided to keep him in. Goes down, knocks down a jumper on the next possession, and then Sam goes right back at him and draws the 5th foul. And it's kind of a bang play. I thought it was a fine call. Like he kind of beat him to the spot, but more like the getting set was simultaneous with the contact, where he kind of jumped to the spot versus getting set and letting Sam hit him. They kind of met at the same spot, I would say. So like I'm sure Minnesota fans hated the call, but I understand why it was a blocking call. Like you got to get set, you got to beat him to a spot. You can't meet him at a spot. And that's what I thought happened there. So gets a technical. They go 4 for 4 at the line, and now suddenly you're right back in this game. They got it down, and that to 1, and then that led to the missed opportunities that I talked about. And they didn't quit. Like Sam, put team on his back. Tough bucket. They fouled Pharrell Payne, I think intentionally. Put him at the line, and it paid off, and he missed. And then Sam got another tough bucket, and Minnesota bad turnover. So here you are, have the ball, chance to go down, and the moving screen called on Casey, which, so again, I was watching on an iPad and had the live stats up. In the live stats, they've got this as a offensive foul on Sam Griesel, which I could not understand because it was Garcia or whatever was jumping into his body before Sam pushes him away. Like that's a defensive foul. But going back, you can see the official signaling 3-0 and a block, moving screen there. So that was the call, even though they didn't record it properly in the stats, which is weird. But even that, like that's a tough call. Like he kind of at the very end shifted slightly a little bit, but he didn't shove Garcia into Sam. Like Garcia jumped to try to get in front of him and ran into Sam. And then, so I don't know if they, because of his action, made it look like Casey pushed him into him, but still, again, Casey maybe do a little bit better job with that screen, I guess. But so have a chance to take the lead, tie it up, whatever, turn it right back over. Then they get it back, another opportunity. Derek Walker poked the ball away. Sam Hoiberg got a steal. They got the ball up the court. Jamarcus Lawrence goes into a handoff and hands it off and jumps forward, moving screen. Like that's 100% the right call. Easy call by the official. Really, really dumb play by a freshman in a really bad spot. So that offensive foul with 33.7 left. So again, down the stretch here, you don't even get a chance to really get a shot off with the chance to take control, to really put the pressure back on Minnesota. You just kept passing it right back. They fouled Cooper, who was a bad free throw shooter. He went 1 for 2. Called timeout, tried the sideline to kind of throw over the top. Sam went up and got it, and Casey, instead of flaring out because of the way he was defended, decided to curl it to the rim and take the quick 2, which there's plenty of time enough in that situation to go for that if they're defending to take away the 3. They fouled again. Cooper, this time he went 2 for 2. And Minnesota intentionally fouled Griesel with 12.7 left, so they can't get a 3 off because it's a 3-point game at that point. He made both. They fouled Cooper with 7.2. He made the first, missed the second, and got the rebound and pushed it up the court. Nebraska still had a timeout left. Sam Griesel was angling towards Fred Hoiberg on the bench like they were going to call a timeout, but then you can see try to kick it up in another gear. I don't know if the plan was to try to fake like you were taking a timeout and try to sneak past them, try to get them off guard. If that was the plan or if that was just improvisation, it didn't work. Defender stayed in front of him. Sam got pushed toward the baseline with nowhere to go. Tried to spin back as Casey's flaring out to the corner, and Casey's man digs down and knocks the ball off, and Sam touches it last. It goes out of bounds. So again, 3 out of your 4 possessions down the stretch, you didn't even get a shot up, and it's just execution. It's mental mistakes. Just they simply put, they did not deserve to win this game, even though they still had a chance because they fouled with 1.3 left before the ball inbounded. Missed the first, made the second to make it a 3-point game again, or so they got the ball back into Casey, caught it half court, turned and shot just off the back rim and out. Ball game there. So yeah, just really frustrating way to end the season there. Just so many mental mistakes. And this is a team that had done a better job of avoiding that.
Yeah, those things we talked about, what it felt like all of the previous season, those little things that this team, for some reason, they were better at until when it mattered the most, and it came back to bite them. So now, obviously, we transition to the offseason. There's already like maybe over 400. I think it was just under 400 last I looked, people in the transfer portal.
Including a Husker now.
Including a Husker, yes. Our first off-season departure is 7-foot Lithuanian big man Oleg Koyanets. Oleg, we hardly knew you, but he went into the portal this afternoon. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. So we have our first off-season departure. I would assume they are probably doing end-of-season one-on-one meetings this week, which would probably mean that if anyone else is going to go into the portal, which I expect, I'll just say that, there would be they would be happening fairly quickly, depending on the order of who they're meeting with and when they're meeting with them. So that would be my guess on that. But yeah, we've alluded to it on previous pods, and it still remains the same. The portal's going to be a really big part of this offseason for Nebraska basketball.
Yeah. And obviously we know Derek Walker, Sam Griesel, and Emmanuel Vandermal, they are done. No eligibility left. So Oleg already moved on. The biggest kind of decision hanging over the program right now, the most consequential is Keisei Tominaga. We both talked about kind of where we think that's probably going to go. It's just probably going to be tough for Nebraska to find a way to make him coming back the right decision for Keisei, considering all the factors at play. If they can find a way to do that, that would be the first massive win for this program, considering the way he played down the stretch, averaging over 20 points a game the last 11. Again, even that Minnesota game finished with 23 on 8 of 14 shooting. He really did develop into a reliable, consistent scorer. Or again, like he's not going to be your primary initiator, not going to be a guy that you run your offense through, but he can be a weapon, a serious weapon in your offense. Is a guy that can average probably mid-teens over the course of a full season, something like that. Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So that's obviously the.
Damn it. Sorry.
You're not the first to do that. So that's obviously the biggest question mark hanging over the program right now. Just kind of looking at it. I mean, I think, what else do you see in terms of questions facing this program? I mean, everybody at this point you never know who's locked in, who's looking to the portal. But is there anybody else that you're looking at that has a major decision that you think Nebraska needs to worry about, or is it mostly just about who can you get to replace the guys that we know are gone?
It's mostly about who you can get to replace guys that we know are gone. I think there are probably some people who are worried about Ramel Lloyd. Kind of has been a worry since the random he's going to redshirt announcement at the beginning of the year. From everything I've heard and been told, there shouldn't be much worry there. The redshirting was his decision, especially kind of, how he looked compared to some other guys his age when he got to campus played a part in him wanting to redshirt, develop, and get better. His dad recently posted a bunch of practice clips that were, was pretty, liked what I saw in those. I don't think that he's your starting point guard next year, but I think definitely depending on how the roster shakeup concludes, he'll definitely have a role. And I don't think there's really anything I don't think there's any other, departures to quote unquote worry about. I think there's one that is probably coming that I don't think Nebraska fans will be too up in arms about. That's all I'll say there. I don't think they'll be a little too up in arms about it. We haven't been too nice to him on this podcast, and I will leave it at that. But and then it's gonna just become a matter of, there's already like 400 guys in the portal, and as teams' seasons end, whether they're playing in the CBI, NIT, or in the Big Dance, there will be guys going into the portal as their season ends, and that number will keep going up and up and up and up. We've already seen Nebraska's been in contact with some mid-major guys who have gone in early that averaged some big numbers for mid-majors. I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but I know that that they're already working the phones and getting in contact with portal targets. So and obviously helps with the new relationship with the 1890 initiative. It's going to be a big off season for recruiting the portal.
Yeah, and I think Juwan Gary, you feel pretty good about him coming back as a key piece. Jamarcus Lawrence is the other one that really showed some things down the stretch. Obviously, didn't have a spectacular season to where like he would be a hot commodity. You would think that would look to jump somewhere else. So those are probably the two core guys that you got coming back that feel great about, that have proven something to a certain respect. A guy like Blaze Keita, just because of the injuries, you still don't know what you've got with him. But kind of everybody else, like, it's just like you'd like to bring some guys back to see if they can keep developing. But I don't know if there are any further departures outside of kind of that core group that I mentioned that you're going to just freak out about, that will be super impactful. Just because those guys haven't really developed and shown that they can be consistently relied on to play an important role for this program. So that's kind of where you're at. They still, like, that bottom half of that roster, they've got a lot of work to do to develop those guys or to swap them out for somebody new. And we know they have to swap out the stars on the team with somebody new. So yeah, that's the portal will definitely be the thing to keep an eye on moving forward now, because we know Eli Rice is coming in. We'll see kind of what role he plays. You've got Ramel coming off the red shirt. Quan McPherson is coming off the medical, the lost season for the knee injury. No idea kind of what's happening there.
I'm also interested to see how Gary comes back from the shoulder. And that seems to be a chronic thing that's been bothering him for a while. So maybe that would be a little bit of a worry to see how he bounces back coming off of an injury like that with the long rehab recovery time. But other than that,
hopefully whatever thing he had, whatever surgery, whatever care that he was given to kind of heal that thing will, because it was like before the one that really kind of knocked him out for the season. It's something that had been bothering him for most of the season. And like you said, hopefully it's a deal like Sam Griesel where he got that surgery, was able to correct what needed to be corrected with the hip, and then he'll be good long term. Hopefully having it mid-season there will give him the enough of a recovery timeline to get back and be ready to go and look like himself to start the season. But that is definitely something worth pointing out. So a lot up in the air right now. It's kind of do or die time for this team right now. These next couple of months will, I think, determine Fred Hoiberg's future in Lincoln. He's shown, we talked about before, he's shown at this point, like this past season showed, like, hey, this last game aside, where just, again, completely out of character for what the team had been, showed that he could coach these guys up, that he could get more out of less, that he could pull the right strings, that he can adjust his own coaching style to what the roster, what fits the roster, to what the program needs, to what Trev Alberts wants to see from his program. I think for the most part, Fred did a good job of coaching this year. Now the question is, for him and his staff, can they recruit to Nebraska? Can they get talented enough players to where that positive coaching actually means something? Does, like, again, for all the strides they made this year, they finished 500 and missed out on the postseason. So, like, that's in year 4. That's not a great place to be. It's just such a stark change from years 1 through 3 to year 4 that you've got the trajectory kind of looking good in your favor. But the thing about trajectory is it could turn around the other way. You got to keep it going for it to be more than just a blip. And to this point, the staff hasn't shown that they've been able to. They hit on some good culture pieces, some guys that were vital to pushing this program forward. But in terms of like talent, where would they be without Derek Walker becoming the player he was, and Sam Griesel being born in Lincoln and growing up a Husker? Like, that's not a repeatable. That's not something that you can rely on to do every year. So they're gonna have to find a way to lure guys. Hopefully, they can take advantage of the stronger close to the season, the positive strides they made this year to sell. Like, hey, you can come in and pick this and move it up for, take it to the next level. This can be you. Come and be a hero here to help this program get to the tournament, whatever, kind of push this thing over the top. But will kids believe in that? Will it be receptive? How will the NIL situation play into that? Will they target the right and land the right guys? That's obviously evaluation. It's hard to, said that throughout the kind of at the Mossier, it's hard to know how much of it was these were the best guys that he could get, or was he targeting the wrong guys? I
don't think there's going to be anybody who's, well, it's different for the portal, but a certain recruit who we've referenced in the past, who will still remain nameless, once told me that it was no coincidence that he didn't officially get his Nebraska offer until about 30 minutes after Rivals gave him 4 stars. So just jumping at recruiting service ratings is not. I don't think that's what this staff is going to do. I am kind of interested as to like who the point man will be for portal recruiting, because we've kind of throughout this year seen instances of all three full-time assistants doing what they can on the recruiting trail. So I'd be interested to see if it's a all hands on deck effort, or if it's just one, it's not going to be like it was before. There's not one guy whose sole job on staff and sole paycheck is to recruit, but I would definitely be interested to get a peek behind the curtain and see what the operation looks like for recruiting.
Yep. So that's kind of where we're at. It's wait and see mode now. It's game time. Season may be over, no more games left, but coaches got to go to work now, and they got to hit it out of the park to make this make this season a success. They got to capitalize on this now. We'll kind of play this offseason by ear. We'll obviously jump on if there are any significant moves and discuss anything like that. We maybe effort some guests here to kind of close out the season as we get through March, through the tournament, into the full off season, and we'll keep this thing going as long as there's news to discuss. Maybe we'll do some kind of off season like roster look backs analysis to see where guys made strides, so what they've got coming back. I mean, we talked about it briefly here, but can take a deeper look at that. So all that's going to be coming at you on the Nebraska Shootaround podcast as we kind of close out season 2 of the podcast. Thanks a lot for everybody that has listened all season long. Again, go like, rate, subscribe, leave a message, leave a review, and you can follow both of us on Twitter at Jacob Bigelow _ at Jacob A. Bigelow. Stay tuned to Hail Varsity. Stay tuned to Huskers Illustrated. This month, the Hail Varsity magazine just going to print this week. I have an extended feature on Derek Walker and kind of looking at his evolution throughout the program. I think you'll enjoy kind of just seeing it laid out and how he became the player that he was this season. I really enjoyed talking to Derek. He's got some great quotes in there about himself, his own game, his relationship with Fred Hoiberg. So I'd encourage you to, if you're not a Hail Varsity subscriber, subscribe, come join us. We're always looking for new friends, or go pick up a copy on newsstands. Bigelow, you got anything else to plug before we get out of here?
I don't have anything to plug. I need to decide what I'm going to write about for my magazine story. I'll be 100% transparent. But like you said, thanks again to everybody who's tuned in for season 2 with us. We got a lot of great feedback from a bunch of different people throughout the year about the pod, and really means a lot. It's been a long year or so for me. A lot of personal stuff going on away from basketball, and this has been a really good outlet for me to talk about something I enjoy, and the positive feedback makes it all that much better. So I appreciate you for doing this with me, and I appreciate everyone who tunes in every week and tunes in to listen to us talk a little bit of basketball. So like he said, do your podcast homework, and we'll be back when there's some news to talk about, which I'm sure there will be. We just don't know when. So until you hear from us next, this has been the Nebraska Shootaround podcast.